both like introduce ourselves a little bit. So I'm like first year MA student in art history and studying like fashion art and Chinese immigration history. I'm first generation myself. I came to Canada when I was 18, but I'm mostly friends with like second generation Chinese Canadians. And I feel like I identify more with the group and I'm like really interested in their style. Could you like start with like introducing yourself a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am graduated from my undergrad. So I currently work in marketing and fashion. I studied marketing in uni. I have like a Bachelor of Commerce from McGill. I would say that I am probably more like second generation Chinese immigrant, but I was born in China and moved to Canada when I was 5. So most of my life has been spent here in Canada.
Yes.
Um, yeah, in terms of my personal style, I wouldn't necessarily describe it as one particular style, but I think I do really love colors and patterns and tend to stray towards things that have silhouettes that I really like.
Yeah, your style was so vibrant. And I was like looking at your Instagram pictures and it seems like a mixture of a lot of things. And yeah, and also your makeup is really cool. I assume you play with colors of your hair as well.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. I think like fashion has always been for me such a key component of just feeling good about yourself. So yeah, it's always been super important in my life. And I assume is the same for you.
Yeah, it is exactly the same for me. Yeah, I play with a lot of things. I was like growing up with more like Asian style makeup, like Korean, Japanese, and more like influenced by that kind of pop culture. And then when I moved here, I was like practicing with more American, North American style Instagram, like more dramatic kind of look. You said you just graduated. So like when and where were you born in China before you immigrated to Canada?
Yeah. So I was born in Wuhan, actually. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah, which
Yes.
is kind of insane because it's a huge, wonderful city that no one knew about. And now everyone only knows about it for one reason.
Yes.
Um, yeah, so I would say my family, like my mom, technically her family lives in Hubei province, and my dad's family is from Jiangxi province.
Yeah, wow. Did they immigrated when they were in their late 30s, early 40s?
Yeah, so they were in their, I guess, mid 30s when they immigrated, and we actually came once. They decided to like go back, like all in the same year. They said they were like, no,
Oh.
right, and then they came back eventually to Canada. I think all within like a year. This isn't something that we talked about growing up, but recently, I've had a lot of conversations with them about like immigration and how difficult those decisions are, and how me as someone who I'm technically not an immigrant, like I
Yes,
make
exactly.
that decision, I can't really understand how big that decision is, or like what are the things that had to go into it. So it was cool to hear their perspective on that, and yeah, and learn about my own history.
When your parents came here, like which city did you land? Like Montreal or like all the
Yeah,
time?
so Montreal actually is where we immigrated to,
Yes.
and we lived here for about 6 years. And then we moved to Edmonton, Alberta. Um,
Oh,
yeah, and lived there for 8 years. I mean, they're still there, but I decided to come back to Montreal for university. And so I like personally feel a lot more connected to this city because I have my memories as a child here, but also have just spent more time here than anywhere else in the world. So Montreal is really like where I feel is my home.
where you belong. And I assume you grew up with both French and English or just
I did.
English?
I actually grew up learning French before English. English is technically my third language, but it's my by far my best language. But it's a funny thing that it was actually the third language that I learned.
Oh God, what was your first language?
Chinese, so
So
Mandarin.
you could speak that as well?
Yeah, I do speak Mandarin.
Did your parents like speak Chinese at home or like French at home?
So only my mom speaks a little bit of French, but growing up, we always spoke Mandarin, like Chinese at home. That was actually something that, like, amongst my friends who are either, second generation or born in Canada, um, that was the biggest differential. Like, not a lot of my friends grew up speaking Chinese at home, and that's something that my parents found really important for them. So I'm really thankful. I can't read or write fluently. Like, I probably
Okay.
have like third grade, maybe not like second to third grade level
That's
Chinese.
pretty good compared to most of my friends. Yes, a lot of them I know, like the parents would speak Mandarin and then they would respond in English. But is that
Yeah,
something you do?
I don't at all.
Oh,
I
wow.
do have friends who do that. It's like I think it's a pretty common thing amongst like immigrant children, like that they can fully understand a language, but they can't, respond or speak in that language. But um, I think another reason why I can speak fluently is also like I've spent a lot of time in China. Like my parents made sure that we visited frequently. Like probably growing up, we would go back between every like 2 to 4 years. I would spend like the whole summer in China. And in recent times, I've tried to go back every year. So I think because of that, like being able to go back to China frequently, it also helps with the language because then you're kind of fully immersed.
Exactly. Well, every year, that is like as frequent as I went back before the pandemic. Wow.
Yeah, and for me, it was really because my grandma on my mom's side, like she passed away last year, but before she passed
Oh.
away, she was getting old, so like it was really like for me important to spend as much time as I could with her. So that was like the main reason why I went back every year.
Well, I met like just like in recent days, like some people were like, oh, they were fashionable and then they grew up with like family members being really fashionable and really trendy. Do you think it is something in your situation as well? Your mom and your grandma, were they like super expressive with their styles?
Yeah, I would say like for me, I'm definitely most influenced by my mom, but my mom is directly influenced by my grandma. My grandma is
Oh,
very
wow.
she's so on my mom's side of the family, my grandma is very I would say she likes like she can really tell when something is like quality made. But on top of that, she makes things like she does crochet and she knits and like growing up, she made so many things for me. And my mom is very like I think my mom is like a very stylish woman and she does not follow trends. Like she's very much like this is the look that she's into and likes, and she doesn't really pay attention to what other people are kind of into. And it really like from a very young age, I think it left like a big impression on me. And this is also like a result, I think, of like the one child policy in China. But like because my parents could only have one kid, my mom would often dress me up as a boy or as a
Oh,
girl. Like
wow.
she's like, I only have one kid, but I love clothing. So like clothing was always super important. It's definitely like I think my affinity towards fashion and like my care towards it is influenced by my mom and how she always cared about what she put on me as a child.
I guess like because your mom is so freeing and supportive in like stylish taste, like did you run into like any challenges for like getting like piercings, tattoos, coloring, and this kind of stuff?
Yeah, it definitely still did. Like in Alberta, I think when you're 16, like you can get piercings and all these things. And I got a bunch of piercings. My mom was never like mad. Like she was more just like, this is not going to heal because you went to like a shady piercing shop, which she was right. Most piercings are all gone now. Uh,
Yes.
but she was just like, yeah, like she'll still help me, with those things. And I remember like when I got my first tattoo, which is like a tiny tattoo on my wrist. I could show you actually.
Yes, is that the Instagram one? That looks really cool. Yes.
Thanks. Yeah, it's honestly like was to me it was like such a small little thing, but my mom was like, "Oh my god, like that's such a big tattoo." And then, you know, fast forward a couple of years, like now my mom wants to get like a matching tattoo with me.
And is there any stories behind your tattoo? Like the one
Um,
you have?
yeah, honestly, I would say Not really. Like I don't really have any meaning behind any of the tattoos that I have. Like the one I just showed you, it's a Keith Haring piece. He's like a pop artist from the 80s. And honestly, when I was 18, one of my friends was like, this tattoo shop is doing a 2-for-1. Like if you get one and I get one, like we get half off. And I was like, okay, like sure. So that's where that tattoo came from. The one that I have on my arm, I think I was in Brussels. I was visiting a friend and she was working and she works in finance. So she was doing like crazy overtime. So I was like waiting for her and I walked by a tattoo shop and the guy was like smoking outside, like one of the tattoo artists. So I was like, I have like 3 hours to kill. So I just got a tattoo. Again, like it wasn't like super significant to me. I think it was something that visually I liked. The other tattoos that I have a couple stick and pokes. During the pandemic, I bought, like in Quebec, you can tattoo, like there's no restrictions on that. Like you don't need a license to
Wait,
tattoo.
you can tattoo yourself?
You can tattoo yourself and your friends and anyone, and you can charge them for it without a license.
Are you also an like visual artist yourself? Like you can like paint or design?
Yeah. So yeah, I am a visual artist. I make I paint and I sketch and recently started doing digital art. And yeah, I mean that's definitely something that I do, I feel like incorporate into tattooing. Like I sketch out a lot of things and just like send them to friends being like, do you like this? Like, would you want this on your body? And sometimes they say yes. Sometimes, most times they're like, no, I'm okay.
I saw like a lot of your different styles in Instagram. Normally, what would be your like typical daily style?
Yeah, I feel like that has changed a lot because of the pandemic. Like prior to the pandemic, I was working at Essence. I don't know if you know, it's this like luxury, like fashion e-commerce. And going into work every single day, like I would always dress up. Like not like necessarily like, full face of makeup, like dress up, but just like I would take care in selecting my outfits because I really cared about just feeling good in that space. Prior to that, like working every single day, I would always dress up. And now in the pandemic, it's like a lot of the time I just dress up the top half of my body, if that makes sense. Yeah, like you can't see my full outfit. So
Yes.
I don't put in as much effort into like coordinating that. As long as whatever is visible on a screen looks nice, I'm okay with that. But anytime that I do go outside, like whether it's to go to the grocery store or anything, because there are so few in between,
Yes.
I always dress up. Like I'm like, this is like my
Like
one
full
time
on.
this week that I'm gonna like be outside. I'm gonna dress nicely.
And would you dress up like differently, like put like more effort to like a fancy event like a birthday or like someone's wedding or like a prom, graduation?
I feel like I definitely probably put slightly more thought into it, but I am like a big believer in like not caring about being overdressed in daily life. So I think like I don't have clothing that is reserved purely for special occasions. I think everything that I own, I always can incorporate it into like daily life. But in terms of special events, I think I would do my hair in a more fancy way, perhaps, or like take more care with my makeup. Like I love makeup, but I am so lazy. Like it's such an art, and it takes so much effort
It
to do every
is.
day.
And for your like own clothing choice, do you go with like boutique stores, streetwear, or like a mixture of stuff, vintage?
So I would say probably like 50% of my wardrobe is like vintage or thrifted items. Out of the other 50%, like a lot of it is like designer pieces that I've really invested in. So like I don't
Wow.
have, like I think like at this age that I am now compared to when I was a kid, like I really invest in clothing. So things that I've, thought about for a long time and like saved up for, or just like things that I feel like will last a long time. And then like the rest of it is like I don't know, here and there, like Uniqlo. Like I try not to buy like fast fashion, but I will say like I love like Uniqlo and
Yes.
there are certain brands that I'm like, okay, like I can, buy one pair of jeans from them once in a while.
So when you talk about investment pieces, I'm like so curious because I do it too. What were some of your recent favorite like investment pieces?
Yeah, a big one is I have a pair of Anne Demlemister heels that are super like beautiful soft leather. I know they're gonna last like a really long time.
Yeah.
I invest in like some like denim that is like more high end. So like I have a pair from Charles Jeffrey Loverboy. It's this really cool like London based brand that at my old job I actually got to meet the designer and I feel like really connected with their brand. I love Autolinger, which I feel like is a brand doing such cool things with deconstruction, like kind of breaking, clothing down to its like bare essentials. Have yeah, those are some of my like I guess pieces that I really love. Um, like I feel like I really care about like the construction of clothing, and it sucks that it's like not accessible to be able to buy things that where there is a really like innovative treatment done to the fabric or the construction or how it's made. But when I can, and I find something that I really love, I'm like, okay, it's worth it for me to like
Save
save
up
up
for
and
it.
splurge on that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you like the deconstructive like form of clothing.
Yeah. I think a lot of the time when people think about clothing, they think more about, color or material.
Mhm.
But I feel like I really love looking at clothes as like the shape and
The
like how it hangs on the body. And like um, a lot of deconstructed clothing is really looking at what the human body looks like and how like the most bare piece of cloth can like hang on this like shape that's like already really beautiful. So I think that's like the methodology that I really love.
You like form, but you also said you like colors. Is there like a certain palette that interests you the most?
So I would say like not necessarily one particular palette, but I do stray more towards like bright colors rather than like dark colors. Like I think like a lot of people have like basics in their clothing to match with things. So like,
Yes.
basic white tee, black jeans. And I would say like I do have black jeans, but I don't think I have any like basics. Like I think everything that I pick out tends to be like a more loud piece. Maybe this is like a part of like drawing and making art growing up, but like
Mhm.
and learning about color theory, like I really don't think that it's often that colors clash with one another, if that makes sense. Like I think things that people feel like are definitely going to clash, like the rules that people have in their mind, I'm like, I don't agree with those rules. Like
Like
it
red
really,
and green, they can
yeah,
actually clash pretty well.
no, like red and green are actually complementary colors. I think the reason that people don't wear those two colors is because they're associated with like Christmas, right? But like when you overlay any other color on top of that to complement those two, like it does not feel like Christmas anymore.
Yes.
I think there's just no hard rules to how you should pair colors together. I think like you just have to be um
Creative with it,
creative. Yeah,
courageous
exactly.
with it. Would you
Exactly.
say like the clothing form, colors, whatever you pick, do you want to draw attention of people and making the outstanding stuff that are like strong?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would say, yeah, I don't shy away from the fact that I'm like, this is loud and like clearly people are gonna look. Like I think like um and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I feel like there's maybe a societal pressure to be like, you shouldn't want people to like, look at you and check out what you're wearing. But I don't, I'm like, this is like the fun part of fashion. Like I want people to enjoy this as well, the people around me.
Yes, well, that is a very similar attitude here as well. I do like to pick things that like something to give people something to stare at. And
No, I
then
love that.
Yes, and you also share like a very interesting outfit with like dragon patterns on Instagram. And you were like, well, this like in China, this would be something that emperors wear and stuff. And how did you collect that piece?
Yeah, that piece. So that tidbit of information came from my mom actually, because I was always telling her that I love like dragon imagery on clothing. And she was like, oh, did you know like only the emperor could wear dragons? And that particular shirt is like probably like early 2000s, like what
Vintage.
yeah, it's vintage and it's like probably around the era where like surfers wore, you know, like the movie Romeo plus Juliet, like by
Yes.
Baz Luhrmann. So you know how like the Capulets and the um other family, I forget what they're called, but they're distinguished.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're distinguished by one of them wears these Hawaiian shirts. And so like it's from that era. It's from that, it's like a Hawaiian shirt, like as in like a vacation shirt.
Mhm.
But it's really interesting because for me, it's kind of Western culture appropriating like Chinese and Asian art, but like repurposing it into this like mass produced, like sort of flashy Y2K aesthetic. And then for me to buy it and then reclaim that to like be like, actually, like this imagery, this motif actually comes from China. Like I
I
find things like
know.
really cool.
Out of curiosity, except for the Hawaiian shirt that you find the dragon motifs on, do you have any pieces of clothing that you buy in Asia or like brought with you, or ethnic clothing or anything like that?
Yeah, I do. I have a couple, I have like three qipao that I bought in China. Um, one of them is like silk, one of them is thicker, like cotton material, like it's like a non-stretch cotton. And then the other one is a linen dress. I would say none of them are like very traditional. Like they're from like little boutiques in China that, like for me, it's super cool because here, when you see qipao, it's like Chinese people trying to kind of like express their culture. And so they're wearing very traditional qipao and like
Yes.
trying, you know, like express something that's like important to them culturally. Whereas in China, a lot of these boutiques are taking qipao and they're experimenting with it and they're being a lot edgier and being like, let's
Contemporary.
deconstruct this like cultural garment into something really cool and interesting that's like forward looking. So I feel like for me, it was cool to like see that and witness that and be able to like buy clothing that express that. But I do have a lot of clothes from China actually. I have another piece that is like a velvet jacket that has dragons embroidered on it.
Wow.
So again, like I love dragons and I love that motif and it's like sort of like a modern interpretation of like a classic like you know 1920s like Chinese jacket with like the Mandarin collar. So but it's like a modern interpretation of that.
Do you like to collect things like having this culture elements, but with the contemporary reconstructions?
Yeah, I really love that. I think for my own culture, like I think for other cultures that I don't know the cultural significance of these items or I don't like participate, like I'm a lot more hesitant because I don't want to do something that like is expressing these things in a negative way. But I would say like for my own culture, for Chinese culture, it's like a way for me to learn about it, but also to like this is where I get to play around with it because I'm like, this is my culture and I do respect it and understand it. So yeah, I would say like for items that are kind of reinterpreting like facets of Chinese culture, I really love that. But I wouldn't say that I necessarily do that with clothing pieces or artifacts from like other cultures.
Yes. Would you be comfortable to wear the clothing with like Chinese motifs or the cheap house in public, or is that something you would wear to certain occasions?
Yeah, yeah, I feel really comfortable wearing that in public in different informal settings and informal settings. Yeah, I don't think I mean, I think definitely this is something that I'm a lot more comfortable now, but growing up, um,
Than like younger ages?
yeah, exactly. Like I think probably before I was a teenager, like there was a lot more shame surrounding like expressing my culture and my identity. Um, just growing up, especially like when I had first moved to Alberta, where like Montreal is a lot more diverse, and
Yeah.
moving to Alberta to Edmonton, where all of a sudden I was surrounded, strictly by white people, it just felt like I just wanted to fit into that culture and just, not ruffle any feathers. So it wasn't until probably like high school that I was like, whoa, wait a second, like I really care about these things, and started to think about like, yeah, actually taking the care to like express my culture in a way that I felt proud. But now I feel like even from high school to now, I've even grown so much more and express it in such a different way.
Wow, that is like such a meaningful shift. I feel like because I came a lot later than you and your family, I was like that shift, that mental shift in place was like a lot more recent and feel a lot closer to me. Like, I'm like probably still in the transitioning stage. That's kind of like why I'm like really interested in knowing like people who were on the path and then like how far they have made. Definitely interested in that kind of clothing. Didn't have the courage to wear it like before the pandemic, but like probably after the pandemic. And like really interestingly, I feel like I'm not sure if you also feel this way, but like the pandemic just brought me closer to like the Chineseness that I was trying to suppress, which is like really interesting.
That is really interesting. I'm really glad that you brought up that like you're in that transition phase, because I think like, yeah, we have to address that like, Canada is like technically a white society. So you can't move
Yes.
here without having all of these pressures and this like feeling of assimilation. But I'm really also happy to hear that like throughout this pandemic, like it is also like shaped like or like changed some of like your perceptions about like how you can express your identity.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and then I guess we were talking so much about styles and like makeup and everything. When I see your styles, like this is so super cool. I'm like so super happy to connect.
Oh, me too. Me too. I'm really, really happy to like, yeah, have gotten to know you also through this project, but also just hearing about such like a cool, I feel like you're doing such an interesting thesis. I would have loved to study like fashion and like fashion psychology. And it just, to me, it's like kind of undervalued in society, because on the one hand, everyone has to do this every single day. So they don't think of it, as like such a significant thing. But on the other hand, like it's the most immediate way that humans express themselves. And like before you even speak to someone, your appearance communicates so much. So it's like there's so much weight to like studying this. It's so important.
Yeah, and when I saw like your makeup on Instagram, you were talking about therapeutic thing about it. I was like, wow, that is so illuminating. That just kind of hinting on the mental processes behind creating expressive and like creative styles and then kind of using appearances to telling people about ourselves. And yeah, I feel like that was also like speaking to my like a lot of my intentions for like makeup.
No, that's awesome. I'm so happy to hear that like you relate to that. I didn't go anywhere, like I
You're just
put on
doing it?
makeup just because I wanted to put on makeup. And so that's why it felt so therapeutic for me, because like there wasn't even this like intention of like there's a reason behind this makeup. It was just like I enjoyed doing it, so I wanted to just do it by myself.
Oh, yeah, like especially in the pandemic, sometimes we have to create special days and like reasons to dress up.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you noticed, but my name on here is Club Quarantine because I'm part of this collective that throws Zoom parties every Friday. It started as a group of like queer people being like, we miss queer nightlife.
Yes.
And they were like, let's try to replicate it on a screen. And it was also kind of, I feel like, subversive because they took a platform, Zoom, that is meant for office work and turned it into like a party platform. But just a great place for people to dress up. Like if they have nowhere else to go, like the people that come to our parties, they're so decked out in such beautiful clothing, and they have designed their background.
This is so meaningful. Like you throw out parties for people in pandemic to like dress up and even do like interior decorations. The last part for like the creative challenge, if you are going to like a out of pandemic like gallery event or a kind of like the ROM like New Year celebration, what kind of outfit would you pick for yourself that you feel like can best capture your style?
I would say I deeply miss wearing heels, so I would wear the tallest heels that I could.
Tall is your how tall is your heel?
Probably like a pair of platform heels that are like 4-5 inches tall.
Wow. That's very tall.
I just, yeah, I don't know. Like, I just miss wearing heels. And I would probably wear a dress of some sort, maybe something sparkly, and a structured jacket.
Structured
big earrings.
Big earrings. And how would you do your makeup or hair?
I think I would do colorful eyeliner with sparkles. I love sparkly makeup. It's also more forgiving, I find, because you can, smush it and it just sparkles on your face. So probably sparkly makeup, colorful eyeliner. I would probably put my hair up in like buns or 2 braids or something.
Braids sounds pretty fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Braids are one of the only like hairdos that I feel confident doing. So yeah.
Thank you so much for spending time with me talking about like fashion, your story and everything.
No worries. I'm just excited for you and your project. And yeah, thank you also for speaking with me. And yeah, it was really lovely to meet you.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
You too. Have a great evening, Violet.
Bye.